Tonight's forecast, 63 degrees and cloudy skies. Perfect conditions for a podcast. Good evening, everyone. My name is Alex. And look, guys, we have a new background. I recently moved from Bloomington to Indianapolis. Hope to further develop the studio as the moving in goes along. But the mission stays one and the same. We're going to dive deep into the backgrounds and stories of our future healthcare heroes. And tonight, we have a very special guest. We're going to say hello to Jonah Persinger. Jonah, how are you?
Not too bad, not too bad.
All right, Jonah.
I think I should have shaved my quarantine facial hair.
Yes, absolutely. So what's unique about Jonah, what's going to be unique about this podcast is that we're Hoosiers, and Hoosiers love one sport in particular, and it is the sport of basketball. And guys, Jonah has had an illustrious journey through the sport of basketball. He has seen the sport in a ton of different angles, and we're going to dive deep into each of those angles and add a couple non-basketball stuff in between. Jonah, we have one mission today for you. We're going to prove that you, Jonah Persinger, are more than just a med student. Are you ready to go?
Ready.
All right, Jonah, first question. Before we dive in deep into the basketball side, there is actually one more sport that you're actually pretty good at while you were young. Jonah, what do you remember of being part of the Howard Bailey Junior Golf Tour and scoring 2 top 25 finishes during your run?
Yeah, it was just kind of something that I signed up to do because other kids on my middle school golf team were doing it, and it was something to do in the summer. It was a lot of fun. I got to meet a lot of people, play golf at some courses I probably wouldn't have really gotten to play all that much. And it was cool to kind of play in a one-on-one environment as opposed to like playing as a team like I was used to.
And you continued golf during your high school years as well. Is that true?
Yeah, I played all 4 years when I was in high school.
Good. And Jonah, guys, he was pretty good. He made it to the all-academic team during his role. Jonah, I have a question. So I feel like every golfer has like his or her club, like that one club that they always look forward to hitting. For me personally, during the 1 year that I took golf lessons, it was the one wood. I always looked forward of hitting the driver. And I always hated the pitching wedge or the sand wedge because I absolutely hated it. So Jonah, my question is for you. Do you have that one club that you always look forward to hit? And is there another club that you just absolutely dreaded?
Yeah, definitely my 7-iron would be the club that I would most looking forward to hit. I always just felt like it was like the perfect length where I had pretty good control of it and I could hit a decent distance with it. It was kind of my all-around like utility club. I probably pulled it out of my golf bag more than any other club. As far as one I kind of dreaded hitting, it's definitely the driver. I just could never hit off the tee very well. 1 year I would hit, they would all slice to the right. I'd take a lesson. I'd have maybe a week of hitting like a decent drive, and then all of a sudden I would start hooking them to the left because I like overcorrected. Then I have to take another lesson, and probably another week hitting them straight. After that, back to slicing them right. I never could get like the consistency down.
No,
and that was really kind of the downfall of my golf game.
I got you. And it's important too because driver is usually like the first club that you would use, especially for like a par 5 course, right?
No, yeah, it's generally the first club that you hit off the tee, unless you're playing like a par 3. So like if you can't hit the driver very well, you pretty much start off every hole on the wrong foot, which was pretty much how I started off every hole. Just try and find a fairway again.
So teach us for the non-golf players of this podcast. How does one go about choosing? Because I never understand like how golfers are so able to like precisely estimate which kind of club like is appropriate for based on where the ball is. So kind of go through your thought process of how does one choose a golf club for the right situation? Because to me, like the 7-iron is very specific.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the number on the iron corresponds with like the slope of, or like the angle of the club face. So a higher number means the club face is a little bit more of an angle. So it'll hit the ball higher and shorter. So whenever you just play a lot, go on the range a lot, you kind of figure out what distance you can hit each club. And then you really get a feel for like how, if you swing this way, how high the ball, you can hit the ball into the air, or how you can keep it low. And then throughout the golf course, there's markers all along the holes that tell you about how far away you are from the center of the green. So that's like the big thing, is figuring out how far away you are and then picking the club that you hit about that distance.
Gotcha. So it's kind of like seeing how far, just kind of getting a feel about how far you're able to hit with each club.
Yeah, exactly. Like several of like my teammates would hit like 9-iron from like 100 yards out, whereas like I would hit a pitching wedge because I hit a little bit farther than them.
Gotcha. And my last question about golf for you is that I want your take on Topgolf, because Topgolf is something relatively new. It's becoming very popular. So do you like Topgolf, that it's a unique golfing experience that people can enjoy? Or does the purist in you get annoyed at things like Topgolf?
No, yeah, I think it's really fun. I think it's a good way for people to like be exposed to like golf and actually learn how to like swing a club and get practice hitting a golf ball without having to go out to like kind of a preppy golf course and be embarrassed by the fact that they can't hit the ball off the ground. I think it's great exposure for the sport and the game, and it's also a lot of fun. I mean, trying to beat all your friends while you eat appetizers and drink beer is you can't beat that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a new innovation for a game, and kind of a nice modern twist to such a classic game. All right, Jonah, now that we're all warmed up, do we want to move on to the basketball questions? Because there is quite a lot to go through here.
Yeah, we can.
All right. Let's first talk about Jonah Persinger, the player. So you're a part of Brownstown basketball team, Go Braves. And you were part of a team for 2 years, if I'm correct. Mm-hmm. And there was one thing when I was looking through the statistics of the basketball teams that I found pretty interesting. And I apologize in advance if I dig up some old wounds here. So let me see if I get the history correct. Let me see if the Brownstown High School archives were correct here and didn't fail me. So the 2009 to 2010 Brownstown basketball team, you guys had like almost a perfect season. You guys were 5-0. You guys were on your way. Like, you guys had a great chance of winning the 2A division championship. And all of a sudden, you run into number 13 seed Forest Park, and it was an upset. It was a 2-point loss. What do you remember about that game?
Yeah, that would have been my freshman year. So I was not on the sectional or the postseason roster, so I watched that one from the stands. But yeah, so like the year before that, we made it to the state finals. We got beat by Fort Wayne Bishop Lures and future Mr. Basketball and Ohio State superstar Deshaun Thomas. But we returned most of our really good players, so we thought we were going to have a really good season. And turned out that we did. We went undefeated in the regular season, kind of ran through our sectional, and then we got to the regional. They played Bloomfield in the first game, and we won that one. And then during our first game, we found out that Bishop Lures got beat in their morning regional game. So at this point, all our fans and players, we've got like the state title already. It's already coming back to Brownstown, because no other team we thought could beat us. And we were set to play Forest Park that night, who incidentally we'd already played that season. We played them in a holiday tournament in December and beat them by, I believe, 31.
Okay.
So yeah, we blew them out the first time we played them. And in that game, there was just like nothing could go right. They were a little bit bigger and stronger than us. For the most part, I think they had a guy that ended up playing football at Harvard, and I think is on the roster for like the Chicago Bears now. But
oh wow,
yeah, it was just nothing could really go right for the team. We were making shots, we were turning the ball over, and it was just one of those games that it was a really heartbreaking loss, especially for all the seniors that thought they were gonna be able to go home as a state champion.
So even though you were watching this game happening, was there anything you learned from that night? Because obviously, like, yeah, it sucks that the team has to go through that, but it does pave a way for a lot of lessons, I feel.
Yeah, definitely. What's the old like adage, like, don't count your eggs before, or don't count your chickens before they hatch, or whatever. Don't look too far ahead in the future. Like, staying in the moment is really important, because if you start overlooking things, like, those are going to end up being the things that trip you up. Staying humble and having a good sense of like humility is another really good lesson to be learned. I would say, for the most part, the guys on that team were not very humble and ended up coming back to bite them. I think they just got a little overconfident. And then just like, looking back on it, is that those things aren't like the most important in life. Like, life goes on, even with the little rough patches, and just keeping your head up and moving forward, not making the same mistakes twice.
Absolutely. But you had a lot of good memories with the basketball team, because you didn't only just play for Brownstown basketball, right? Didn't you play for, I don't remember what the league is called. You played for the Sycamores for another league. And I didn't quite understand what that league was. So could you explain that league a little bit?
Yeah, so there was Sellersburg, Indiana, is a town in southern Indiana near actually near where like Cray is from, and Nate. And they would host a league in this giant field house that had like 4 or 5 courts, where you would sign up and you get placed on teams randomly and just play on like Sunday afternoons. It was good. Like, I think they had a spring league and a fall league. So I played in that several years, and it was a lot of fun. I'm trying to think. I don't really remember the Sycamores team that you mentioned, because I played on it like several years in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was just a good way of staying active and still being able to play some games during like spring and fall.
Got you. Jonah, one of the things of why Indiana is so known for its basketball is just because of the ridiculousness of the basketball gyms that these high schools have.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are just humongous. Is there one gym in particular that you went to and you're like, wow, this is real?
Yeah, so I'm from Brownstown, which is about 10 minutes away from Seymour, which is where Brooke is from. And they now have the largest gym in the high school gym in the country. So all growing up, I was able to, yeah, in the country.
Oh, wow. I did not know that.
Yeah. So I think it's like 11 of the top 12 largest high school gyms in the country are in Indiana, or something like that. But Seymour's the biggest now. It used to be Newcastle Fieldhouse, but they kind of miscounted seats and got that title taken away from them. So Seymour's really nice, especially when it's really packed for like the sectionals and regionals and semi-states, like it had been these last several years with like Romeo Langford playing at New Albany and always going through that sectional. And then Newcastle Fieldhouse is probably like the biggest like wow factor, because it's a giant bowl. So you walk in on the top level and you just like look down in the pit. And I think it's a really cool gym design, and it's massive, and it just feels huge when you walk in.
So when you play in these like big gyms, or just any gym in general, there's always like, when I cheer on basketball teams in the stands, like some of us shout things. Sometimes we don't shout the nicest things. When you were a player on the court in high school, were you able to hear what people were saying, either to the team or yourself? Or is it just you're so focused on the game that you just don't even hear it?
I think a lot of the times is you don't even really like comprehend what they're saying. You just hear noise. As far as like actually taking in what they're saying, it's pretty difficult, unless like it's a dead ball and you're standing right in front of them when they're taking the ball out.
And what do you have like any because basketball teammates are usually like so close because you guys spend so much time with each other. You have practice, you have the games, you have all of the bus rides, those kind of things. Can you talk about a little bit about just kind of the camaraderie that you had with your teammates?
No, yeah, like you said, you spend a lot of time with them, especially like basketball season. A lot of the times, like you can get to school when it's dark out, and then you go to practice after school. It's like 6 o'clock, 6:30, and it's dark out. So you really are just, it feels like every day, like you're just with them all the time, especially at a small school like Brownstown, where I had like 136 people in my class. So I knew everybody in my class, and I had multiple classes a day with all the same people. You just build up like, I don't know, a close bond where you feel like you can talk to them about anything, or also just be yourself around them like 100% of the time. I don't know, it's hard to explain.
Yeah, and I think that shows it right there. Like it's just there's just such a unique bond that it's very hard to put into words. All right, Jonah, we're going to move on because we're going to move now to Jonah Persinger, the coach, because you had a very special opportunity while you were an undergrad. Can you talk a little bit about distinction?
Yeah, so I officially worked for Distinction summer before my junior year. So that would have been summer 2015. I had volunteered with them every summer from summer 2013 until summer 2015. Distinction is a nonprofit organization run out of Bloomington. It's founded by Luke Zeller, who is Cody Zeller and Tyler Zeller's oldest brother. He played at Notre Dame and then a little bit for the Phoenix Suns. And yeah, I look at that mop of hair. Yeah, that is from the summer 2013. So I just graduated high school.
Okay.
Yeah, Luke founded that organization, and they really do a lot of, it's basketball training, but they try and throw in some like character development as well for like the campers. Mm-hmm. And then there's a religious aspect of it too. On Sundays they'll like do like chapel, and they'll have a little bit of a Bible message then on Sundays as well. But it was a lot of fun. It was very tiring. I think the summer I worked was the first summer they did day camps. So we would do like 1-day camps on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then 3-day camps on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So at one point we did like 15 days of camp in like 16 days or something. It was wild. But it was a really cool opportunity working with Luke. And then there are still like several of the campers I had on my teams. They like followed me on Instagram, and they'll like message me every so often and like update me on how they're doing with like basketball and stuff. It's kind of cool.
Yeah. How old were these kids that were at this camp?
They did camps for kids as young as like, I want to say 2nd grade. Mm-hmm. And then the majority of camps, the oldest they could be was 8th grade. Obviously they did not make the 2nd graders go against the 8th graders. They had it divided up in like different sessions. And then sometimes we would have high schoolers that would come and do like I think we called it like a leadership academy or something, where they would volunteer and coach, but then we would also work with them before and after camp started.
Got you. So during high school, you were the player. Now during this camp, you kind of took a more coach role because you're kind of teaching these players like fundamental skills and those kind of things. What did you learn? What did you learn to appreciate from the coaching angle of it that maybe you didn't quite see from the player perspective?
Oh man, that's a tough question. I think.
Because I could assume that like it seems so automatic to you, like you just shoot the ball, like you just. Mm-hmm. Shoot it. But now you have to teach these kids, like you have to break it down. How do you shoot a basketball? How do you dribble correctly? Those kind of things. So I don't know. What was that was like? Revealing?
So a lot of the coaching roles, especially kids that age, is like just teaching them how to do things. That really gave me a newfound kind of appreciation for like just teachers in general, because to me it would seem so obvious because I knew how to do it. I knew exactly what you needed to do, like how you needed to have your hand on the ball, your feet, and all that stuff. But like a lot of those kids, they don't, and they've been doing it wrong for so long. actually getting them to do what they're supposed to do just made me want to pull my hair out. So that was definitely, and then learning how to communicate with people across like different backgrounds, because we did some camps in kind of inner city Cincinnati. We partnered with a group there. We would do a free camp, and then you'd kind of have to communicate with those kids a little different than you would communicate with some of the kids in like Bloomington or even some of like the smaller towns in Indiana. And then also just like how you teach them, because some kids are like visual learners, some need to see you do it, some need to have you actually show them how to do it, and some can just do it right away with just what you tell them. So I think it taught me a lot of learning how to tell if someone's actually getting it and understanding what I'm telling them versus just nodding their head yes, and some different teaching methods and how to actually get my message across.
So you obviously seen a lot of young aspiring basketball players, and you said with their bad habits. What's the most common bad habit that you see young basketball players doing?
Probably like shooting the ball with both hands, like using both of their hands for a shooting motion rather than using their kind of a non-dominant hand as a guide hand and keeping their dominant hand behind the ball and only using it for their shooting motion.
That's funny because I definitely use both hands when I shoot a basketball.
Whenever the quarantine's up, you can come back down from Indy and we'll head over to the Hyper and get a couple shots up.
That's perfect. Yeah, I will love that. So unfortunately, I don't remember which newspaper said this, but you were interviewed by one of the newspapers about this camp. And something interesting that you said was that you taught these basketball players something called havoc, which means that you learned how to take a charge and how to steal, those kind of things. Were you teaching second graders how to take a charge?
Yeah, so it was really funny. Havoc was a drill where we would have them start on like the block. Somebody would drive at them. They would take a charge. They would stand up, and then the person that had the ball would roll the ball towards half court, and they would take off running, dive, and try and grab the ball before it got to half court. They'd stand up, make a pass, and cut, and then we would throw them a pass, and they would hit like a layup or something, or shoot a jump shot, just depending on how we wanted to finish that day. But yeah, it was always really funny to watch because like Luke sometimes would jump in, and he would go against the second graders, and of course he's 7 feet tall and played in the NBA, and we just dribble in and like just full arm, just like shove the kid to the ground. But no one ever really got hurt that I can remember, and they all loved it, and it was like one of their favorite things to do because when you're a kid, you just love falling down and diving on the ground.
Whose idea was havoc? Like, whose idea was that?
That was a drill that they'd been doing at camp even before I started, so I'm gonna guess it was one of Luke's ideas.
Gotcha. What was it like meeting Luke Zeller, by the way?
He's really tall. You don't realize how tall like somebody that's 7 feet tall is until like you're up close and personal with them. But he was also really cool. He was very personable. He's very nice. Would walk right up to you, shake your hand, like have a conversation with you, ask about your life. Just kind of a very genuine guy, and which not a lot of guys in his position are that way. So that was really eye-opening and just really, really cool to see somebody that has played in the NBA act like that. I've met both of his brothers, like Tyler and Cody as well. And they had a little bit more success in the NBA, and they're both like that as well.
Crazy, because like on TV they may not look so tall as like they actually are. You actually see them and they're just absolute giants.
No, yeah, they're huge. It just blows your mind, especially walking around. We would stay at like host families' houses, and the majority of host families, their house isn't built for people that are 7 feet tall. So just watching them walk around constantly with like their head tilted it's kind of funny.
Well, Jonah, what a cool opportunity you got to do during your undergrad, because getting to not only like teach them basketball skills, but also like teaching them some life lessons as well in between. Like, what a cool experience. So
That was awesome.
yeah, so very cool. All right, we're gonna switch Jonah Persinger. So we've done the player, done the coach. Now let's do Jonah Persinger, the manager. So you had an opportunity to manage IU's women's basketball team. So I first want to ask, how did you fall into this position?
Yeah, so it kind of goes back to the distinction stuff. That picture that you just showed, that was the first distinction camp I worked at. And one of the other guys that worked at the camp was a manager for the IU men's basketball team. And I originally thought I wanted to work with the men's team. And he told me that he did his freshman year, he was a women's manager, and he would recommend doing it first just to see if like you liked doing it and liked like the time commitment and all that stuff. So I took his advice. I went to orientation. Then orientation, my dad and I went up to Cook Hall, which is the IU basketball practice facility. And I just went into the women's basketball office and asked about possibly being a manager. It's funny because at the time I didn't realize the person I was asking was the head coach. I just thought it was some random guy that was in there.
Yeah.
And they took down my contact information, emailed me the schedule, told me to come by a couple of days, see if I liked it, see if I'd be a good fit. And then they asked me if I wanted to stay on and keep managing. So I did, and it was a lot of fun.
So what was that role like? Because obviously you had classes going on as well. Like, you know, like any NCAA athlete, like they have such a busy schedule because sometimes they have to travel, you know, as far as like Rutgers, all the way on the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So like, how did that responsibility kind of work out?
My freshman year, it wasn't too bad. We had two guys that were older, and so we always traveled with three managers. So those two always went. And then me and two other younger guys would kind of rotate through the third spot. So I didn't get to travel a whole lot my freshman year, but we did have practice a lot. I think we practiced like 6 days a week. And we would have games every so often too. But my freshman year on Tuesdays and Thursdays, practice started at 6, and they wanted the managers there, 6 a.m., and they wanted the managers there 45 minutes early to set up. So like a lot of the time during my freshman year, I'd wake up at like 4:30 in the morning and make my way up to Cook and Assembly Hall to start setting up for practice. Then sophomore year is when I really started traveling a lot. And so like we get letters from the athletic department to give to our professors that say like, hey, I'm going to need some excused absences. But I was a biology major, so I took mostly bio and biochemistry classes. There's not a whole lot of athletes in biology and chemistry classes. And I definitely didn't look like an athlete either. So I would just walk up and hand them this like letter from the athletic department saying I needed to travel with a team. And just the look on their face was like,
oh,
what are you talking about? Like, why are you giving me this? Nobody really gave me all that much of a hard time for it. They were generally pretty good about working with me. I do remember my sophomore year, I want to say I went to, because we had a lot of road trips to start spring semester my sophomore year. I want to say I went to class 4 times in the first 3 weeks.
wow.
Because we were on the road so much. Because we would fly out the day before, play the game, and then fly back that night. So sometimes we wouldn't get back until like if we played like a 9 o'clock game and it was in Nebraska, we probably wouldn't get back until like 3 in the morning.
Wow, that's such a busy schedule.
Yeah, it was a lot. But I mean, I wouldn't trade it for anything. It was a really good experience. I mean, I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. During some of these road trips, again, I should have done a better job writing down my sources. However, you did say in another publication that you had the opportunity to meet other Big Ten women basketball coaches, and you also had the opportunity to meet some WNBA assistant coaches as well. Is there one coach in particular that it was like, wow, like this was pretty cool to meet that person?
Yeah, let me see. I've met several. One of the players that was my age was Taylor Agler. She ended up transferring when we had a coaching change, but her dad is the head coach for the LA Sparks and the WNBA. It was really cool to meet him. I didn't get to meet Muppet McGraw whenever we played against Notre Dame, but it was cool, like, kind of being around her because she's a Hall of Fame coach and one of the best women's basketball coaches ever. I think probably the one that would cut me the most off guard was Doug Bruno is the head coach at DePaul for their women's team, and we played them one year. And like the court there is named after him, and he's a really well-known like women's basketball coach. And I was just like walking some like Gatorade bottles out to the bench, and like he stopped me and just like struck up a conversation. So I thought that was really cool that this guy who's really famous, getting ready to play like a college basketball coach against a college basketball game, is just stopping this random manager to talk about how things are going. It was just really interesting.
Yeah, it says a lot about his character as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, Jonah, can you explain what trophy you're holding in this picture? Because it's a pretty important trophy, isn't it?
Yeah, so that's the Barn Burner Trophy. I don't know. The men's basketball team doesn't have a trophy with Purdue but the women's basketball team does. And as you can tell, Purdue is generally much better than IU in women's basketball. They just have a stronger history. The IU women's basketball program is kind of known for being pretty crappy. So this year we actually won. I can't remember what year that is, but we won, and that was a really big deal because Purdue had generally been really good. It's still a big deal, but less so now because I think they've won like 7 in a row against Purdue. It really has kind of flipped the script where IU is the premier program in the state in the Big Ten, and Purdue just kind of sucks.
No bias whatsoever, right?
No, none at all.
So is it true that like managers play other teams' managers as well?
Yeah, if you can. It's easier for men's managers to play against other men's managers' teams because the budgets for the teams are a little bigger, so they can travel with a few more people. The women's side, our budgets are pretty small. We would travel with 3 managers, so like obviously 3 people is not enough to play a game. But we kind of had a few tricks up our sleeve. Some of our support staff and assistant coaches would play. Not really fair, because my sophomore and junior year, our graduate assistant her name was Amanda Hyde, and she was 2-time conference player of the year at IPFW, and she would play with us. And then we also had our director of player development was Bree Bass, and she was a point guard that played for Pat Summitt at Tennessee. And so we would bring those 2, and we pretty much would just let them do most of the scoring because nobody could guard them because they actually played college basketball and were really, really good. I remember we played at Ohio State against their managers, and they had this girl that was pretty short and honestly just not very good. And she was about the same size as like Bree, our director of player development that played at Tennessee. So they matched up, and she was guarding her initially. I think Bree scored our first 25 points before they finally switched somebody else onto her.
Oh my goodness. So are these games, like, what's the vibe of these games? Are they usually just, hey, let's just have some fun, or does it get pretty competitive?
Oh, it definitely gets pretty competitive. It's fun. Yeah, it's all fun for probably the first, because we would play 20-minute running clock halves. It's fun for about the first 30 minutes. And then the last 10 minutes, it gets like pretty intense. Like people actually like diving on the floor and like playing defense. And I know I definitely left, like, we played a game against Maryland's managers. I know I definitely left that game with like needing like to wrap both my knees up because they were bleeding from like actually diving on the floor and stuff.
So you were using those havoc skills, weren't you?
Yeah, exactly. I learned it all as a coach for distinction, how to dive for the ball.
Yeah. And Jonah, so I want to get your perspective on this because you obviously saw the women's basketball team during your time as manager. But the unfortunate reality is that the women's team just doesn't gather as much attention or news as much as
Mm.
the men's team does. Yet, as you said, like the women's basketball team we have at IU, they're pretty good. They've been definitely up and coming. So, um, what's your opinion of like why should people come out and see the IU's women's basketball team?
Definitely now there's a little bit more incentive than whenever I was a manager because they actually are really good. This year they were spent pretty much the entire year ranked around number 10, number 12. They beat South Carolina, who finished the season as number 1. I definitely think people should come out and watch them play because I mean they work hard. When people think of like Indiana basketball playing like tough nosed defense and like good team basketball, quote unquote, I think the women's team really kind of that's like their identity as well. They work hard. I mean, they're just really fun to watch. I mean, and like I said, they're really good. And also being in Assembly Hall, like women's games, like the seats it's open seating. So like you pretty much can walk in and like sit courtside and there's nothing like just being that close to the court in Assembly Hall. It's like a pretty, I would say, magical place.
Absolutely. Go. All right, people, you heard it. Go support the women's basketball team because they're working hard. They're very good, and you'll have a lot of fun in those games as well. All right, Jonah, we're going to move on from the manager side of things, and we're going to enter the last stage. I think it's a very fun stage. We're going to see now Jonah Persinger, the basketball fan. So your family, like there's such a lineage of Persingers that have went to IU. Is it true that 3 generations, you're the 3rd generation of Persinger to go to Indiana University?
Yeah, my grandpa, when he got out of the Navy and got back from, I can't remember, I think the conflict in Korea, he was on a aircraft carrier in the Navy. He came back and then enrolled at IU and graduated from IU with a degree in English and education. And then my dad came to IU and he got a degree in math education, although he has never been a teacher. He graduated and ended up being like a cop for a little bit. And then I came to IU. So I applied other places, but there really was never a doubt that I was going to end up coming to IU because I mean I grew up an IU fan my whole life.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you hear your stories from your grandpa or your dad reminisce about their times at IU, and now you've went through your 4 years of undergrad at IU as well, what are like the biggest differences that you've heard when comparing those experiences?
So yeah, I didn't ever get to talk to my grandpa about it too much because he passed away when I was like younger. But I've talked to my grandma about it a little bit. So back then, IU had married couple housing in what is now, oh man, what is it? It's either Woodlawn or not Dunmeadow or Woodlawn. Either Dunmeadow or Woodlawn was married couple housing, which is just like trailers that they had set up. So that's where they lived.
Oh, wow.
And then obviously those aren't there anymore and it's all open grass again. But then my dad, he commuted all 4 years from Brownstown. He didn't live over here. But one story that he has that I wish I could experience was he was a freshman whenever they won the 1987 national title.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I've seen pictures of him like just down on Kirkwood, like when they were celebrating like winning a national title, which is definitely something I wish I could have experienced as a student because it looked like it was a lot of fun.
All right, confirm the rumor for me. Does he have the fish statue in his basement?
He does not have the fish statue in our basement. I wish we did. But then it was always just really cool to like walk around campus with him because like he'd be able to like talk about like when he would have classes in like Woodburn or like Ballantyne. And then sometimes we would like walk through buildings and see professors' names like outside of their office and he'd be like, oh, like I had that person as a professor.
Very cool. Yeah. So to explain what the fish statue story was, this is from like my tour guide information. So correct me if I'm wrong. However, like there's a rumor. So 1987 championship happens. People go to Showalter Fountain, this big fountain in the middle of a campus. There is, I think, 6 fish statues or something like that. And apparently the story is that the adrenaline was just so much that people like literally uprooted these very heavy fish statues out of the fountain and just ran away with them. And they found all of them but one. So now there's like 5 regular fish statues and there's 1 small fish statue. And the thing now is that we have still to this day no idea where the fish statue is. My favorite rumor personally is that it's in Bobby Knight's basement and then it will not be returned ever. So yeah, that's what the fish statue story is.
And I used to not believe that the story could be true, but I'm now a firm believer because that year they won the national title. Like I said, my dad was on Kirkwood, and he told me that there's just a huge mob of people. And if you ever want to see pictures, they have pictures in upstairs bar from then of Kirkwood at that time. And he said some lady tried to drive her car down Kirkwood through the crowd.
Oh.
And by the time she made it through, the crowd had ripped off all of her doors and taken her back seats out of the car.
Whoa, what?
Yeah.
Wow.
So definitely never try and drive through a crowd of people that are celebrating a national championship.
No. Oh God, I tried to think if that would happen during like our time. No, that would not work at all.
No, people would be really mad.
Yeah. Speaking of your fandom during IU, even though unfortunately we didn't get to experience a championship, you still had some fun while going to these games. Jonah, what do you remember dressing up as Barney Flintstone for one of these games?
Yeah, it was the North Carolina game. It was me and my roommate Zach. We were not supposed to have behind the basket tickets, but one of our friends couldn't go, so he gave us, and his friend couldn't go, so he gave us their tickets. And we're like, we're behind the basket, like we have to wear costumes. And so we went to campus costumes whenever, I think it's moved now. It's like at 10th and the bypass, and picked up just these costumes really quick so we could have something to wear to the game. And then we played North Carolina. We beat them like by 10 or 11 points. And I can remember texting my dad after the game and like, this team's like capable of winning a national title. I was so hyped up. And then we didn't even make the NCAA tournament. So that was really sad.
Oh no. Wait, yeah, I think I remember which team you're talking about. There was such high hopes and then who knows what happened.
No, yeah, it was they beat Kansas and then got beat by Fort Wayne and then beat North Carolina and then didn't make the NCAA tournament. That was Tom Crean's last season.
Oh, okay, right before Archie Miller. Okay, yeah, got you. Was this the only time you dressed up in a costume, or were there other times when you dressed up in a costume?
No, so there was a Purdue game. We were also behind the basket, and I wore a Buzz Lightyear costume.
Oh.
And I actually got to run the flags during the flags timeout.
Oh, like
the Buzz Lightyear costume.
Those kind of things?
Yeah, okay. With the cheerleaders.
Yes.
And that was really fun and a cool experience. The only downside to that was my Buzz Lightyear costume was a little small. It just did not fit very well. And Greg Doyle, that writes for the Indianapolis Star, he wanted to take a picture of us all because Zach was dressed as Woody, and our other roommate Mitchell was in like a Mr. Potato Head costume, and a couple other people in our group were like Mrs. Potato Head and like Bo Peep or something. I don't remember other Toy Story characters. But I did like the To Infinity and Beyond, like
yes,
stand in my costume, and it was so small.
Don't tell me you're ripped.
No, it just got real tight in the crotch and really left nothing to the imagination. And Greg Doyle ends up tweeting the picture to all of his Indianapolis Star followers.
Oh no.
So I spent the rest of the game just worrying about how all of Greg Doyle's followers could just see everything I was packing.
And was there feedback, or was there?
I mean, I avoided any feedback, Alex. It's best not to take criticisms in that area, you know?
That's very fair. Oh, wow. So besides worrying about that, because like whenever I see those, I always get very nervous when they're like crisscrossing each other at the end. Like I always get a ton of anxiety. Were you nervous about that part too, or was that pretty easy?
No, I was definitely nervous because I was not the most sober individual either
Okay.
while doing it.
Yeah.
It was funny because whenever they select you, the cheer coach takes you off to the side and is like emphasizes over and over again, do not say anything to the opposing team. Like,
Oh, okay.
or like we will like kick you out.
Yes.
And then they give you a rundown of what to do. And then the cheerleaders are actually like really good. They're like the one like behind you like communicates like, all right, go now, and like tells you kind of like they kind of direct the show.
Nice. A little bit behind the scenes there, because I always wonder, it's like, wow, they did that pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
But that makes a lot of sense.
No, yeah, it was for sure. I was for sure very nervous, but I mean, it goes by so fast too that you don't even have really realize what you're doing.
All right, Jonah, we have completed the basketball journey. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective on such a great sport.
Mm-hmm.
Before you go, Jonah, there is one more topic that I do want to talk about that happened very, very recently. Of course, I'm talking about you and Brooke's recent wedding. And it was a very unusual wedding because he had to do it during this COVID pandemic that we're all facing right now. Could you talk a little bit about that, of just how it was? You spent a long time planning for this wedding, and then all of a sudden this pandemic comes along and you just had to change plans like that.
Yeah, it for sure was not the day that we expected at all. But it still ended up being like really great. Like you said, we'd made plans for forever. We had put in a lot of work getting the venue, getting suits for groomsmen, getting ties, flowers, photographer, DJ, catering, all that stuff. Music. We had a girl that's going to play violin. And then the COVID stuff starts happening. And at first, we're like not really sure like what's going on. We're still kind of planning on having it like normal. And then the first like guidelines come out of like no like over 50 people, I think, or something. And at this point, we're like, should we still have it? Should we not? And we weren't really comfortable having the full 215 people that we invited when all that stuff was originally coming out. So we knocked off some people and got down to like 115 or 130, I don't remember. And then even more guidelines came out. And at this point, like Illinois and Ohio start doing their stay-at-home orders. And we're coordinating with the lady that runs the venue. And she's telling us, oh, it's going to be fine. Like, we'll have like however many people you want or you're comfortable with. Like, nothing bad's going to happen. So we're still just kind of chilling. But then she ends up having a meeting with like the Monroe County, like Board of Health or something. The venue is actually in Owen County. But it's so close to Monroe that she met with them. And they kind of tied her hands a little bit and told her like, you can't have anything because if anything, like an outbreak would come out of this, like we're going to hold you liable for it. I don't exactly know what the consequences of that would have been. I don't think there really could have been anything, but it was enough that kind of scared her. And she said, well, now like you can only have like immediate family in the bridal party. So I'm like, okay. So we have to cut even more people. And at this point, it's getting like really hard because I'm having to cut like cousins and aunts and uncles and stuff that I've like grown up with. And like Brooke's having to cut like her close friends from college and some of her cousins, aunts and uncles and stuff too. And that's really tough. And then we get that kind of figured out, and it comes up that it's like Governor Holcomb announces on Monday, the 23rd, so the day I was supposed to take step, that we're going to have like a stay-at-home order in Indiana starting on like 11:59 on the 24th, midnight, the morning of the 25th. At this point, like, Brooke's so frustrated, she's like kind of done with it because all of our plans have like literally just fallen apart. I don't really know what to do. So then I'm like, you know what? Stay at home doesn't go in effect until tomorrow night at midnight. Let's see if we can throw this all together in a day. So we contact the venue, see like, hey, is it open tomorrow? Like, can we come and do a wedding tomorrow? She said yes. I contacted the pastor that married us. He was free. So those are like the two most important pieces. And then my best man is my roommate Zach that you saw with me in the Fred Flintstone costume. He lives in Minnesota now, up in Minneapolis, and he actually had driven back to Brownstown already because we grew up together in anticipation that his flight was going to get canceled. So he was here. And then the lady that made our flowers was able to get them done and deliver them. The caterer was willing to bring food. So we kind of threw a whole wedding together in 12 hours or something like that. It was really fast. Then the day of was a lot of hecticness. I realized when I woke up the day of that I forgot to buy shoes for the wedding. So I didn't have any shoes. I had to end up wearing a pair of my uncle's shoes. And then I think you maybe have heard this story, but maybe not.
Are you talking about when you found a certain something in some field of grass?
Yeah, so the day of the wedding, I spent the night at my parents' house in Brownstown, and Brooke spent the night at her parents' house in Brownstown. And I got up early and drove back over to my apartment here in Bloomington. Brooke was supposed to pick my mom up, and they were going to ride over together to the venue. And she got to my parents' house and realized that she could not find the rings. She remembered packing them and thought she put them in the back of her Jeep or in her bag. Could not find them. They looked all over, couldn't find them. They finally realized she put them on the bumper of her Jeep before she took off driving. So somewhere between her parents' house and my parents' house, they fell off the road, off the bumper of the Jeep into the road. So at this point, her family's walking up and down the road. My family's walking up and down the road. My dad is riding his bike up and down the street. My mom has my aunts and uncles out there. My mom called the sheriff's department to see if they could help or see if anybody had turned rings in. And they can't find them, and they're looking. And finally, my dad on his bike spots this little black piece of leather on the ground. He picks it up, and it says, like, Flagene's Jewelers, which is where I bought her rings from. And he's like, I found this. So then they all go there, and they start, like, scattering from there, looking for the rings. And eventually, my sister was able to find both of them laying in a field near where they found that ring box. And it looks like the ring box had gotten hit by a lawnmower. So definitely was nerve-wracking for them. They didn't tell me about it until after the ceremony was over.
Oh, you didn't
So,
know?
No, yeah, the whole time I was just sitting in my apartment, like, I ordered Avers and was watching The Office.
Oh my goodness. That's crazy. What a wedding day.
No, yeah, it ended up being, we would have loved to have had everybody there and, like, had a big celebration, but, like, kind of just a small little ceremony with, like, our parents and grandparents and my sibling and some of Brooke's friends and some of my friends was really nice. Unfortunately, like, Brooke's twin brother, he lives in Cleveland with his wife and their daughter, and they weren't able to make it because it was such a last minute thing. And then Cleveland also had a stay-at-home order, but it ended up being a really good day.
Yeah, Jonah, like when I hear this story, like, oh, like, like nothing was a plan, right? Like, you had this big wedding, now you had to make one in 12 hours. You didn't have your shoes.
No, yeah, I didn't have my shoes. Now we've got a bunch of stuff that has like Jonah and Brooke, like 328, 2020 on it, even though we actually got married on 324 now.
Yeah. But, there's just so much, when I hear these stories, like, there's just so much love there, right? Like,
hmm
there's so much love of, like, like, even though there's so many adjustments that had to be made, and, like, there's a lot of love while looking for the missing rings and the bracelet. There's a love from your uncle, like, letting you borrow his shoes and those kind of things. Like, yeah, man, it's just amazing how much, like, love prevails, um, despite these, like, just despite just such a crazy wedding, just a crazy, like, untraditional wedding story. But, like, you know what? Like, 10, 20 years down the road, like, what a story to tell.
Oh yeah, definitely gonna be quite the story. Even if this is another one of those things, like in the moment, like it's very easy to kind of get caught up in like nothing's going right, like this is not going how I thought it would. And there was a little bit of time on that Monday after the stay-at-home got announced that I was like really not sure it was gonna happen, just because we were both just so frustrated with everything. But yeah, we ended up making it work and having like a really great day. And like you said, like the love prevailed and we got everything that we needed done, and it was awesome.
Well, Jonah, congratulations to you and Brooke for persevering, first of all, and having still, because I look at these photos and it's like cute, very, very cute. So very, very good. Do you guys have when this whole pandemic thing is passes by? Do you guys have plans for like a honeymoon destination?
Yeah, I don't know exactly what it's going to be originally, because we both like hiking. We were going to fly into San Francisco, drive to Fresno. We had a really cheap Airbnb there, and it's about an hour and a half drive from where we were staying to like Yosemite National Park one way, and then like an hour and a half drive to like Sequoia National Park. So we were going to go out to those national parks and hike for most of the time. Now, I'm not 100% what we're going to do. We're definitely planning on something in the spring. So hopefully I'll be able to like make it work with like um, the vacation months that we get and my step two schedule to be able to go and do something. Where we're not sure yet, but that's the plan right now.
Well, I hope the plan for that is a lot more mundane than what you had to go through for planning for the wedding.
No, yeah, it would be nice if that was just kind of a boring thing to plan.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Jonah, we got through a lot. We're running out of time here, but I want to thank you so much for joining this episode today. I think people will have a lot of fun listening to the different experiences that you had with basketball and also this crazy wedding story. Because I think, there's just so much going on there. And I think people will be amazed at what you and Brooke went through.
hmm
So I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your experiences with me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I was been looking forward to it since you texted me a few days ago.
All right, people. We proved one thing today. We have proven, without a doubt, that Jonah Persinger is more than just a medical student. Thank you guys very much for listening today. Please look forward to our next episode, and we'll see you later. Have a good